Okay, welcome to the SFMS 1099 training for tax year 2023. My name is Carlene Hancock. I am the employee for the state of Oregon for DAS. That is the primary contact for all 1099s that are created and distributed through the R-Star system. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I have quite the agenda. I tried to put all the pages and subjects, so if you are to use it as a reference material in the coming months, hopefully this gives you a little bit easier look back to the slides that you need. Basically, we're going to talk about the 1099 IRS changes that were announced this year. We're going to talk about what it takes in the system to even generate a 1099. What has to be in place. We're going to talk about the 1099 forms themselves, 1099 miscellaneous and the 1099 NEC. We create both out of R-Stars. We're going to talk about the reports that you are available to the agencies to use. We strongly encourage you to use them to identify any changes that are necessary prior to the printing of 1099s or to use throughout the 1099 season, and that goes through April. And we're going to talk about changes and how they are to be made and reported prior to January 12th, December close, and then after January 12th, December close. Finally, I have kind of the lingering topics that really don't come under a nice neat heading, kind of miscellaneous. But as an accountant, none of us like the word miscellaneous. We all want it slated into a nice category. But we're going to talk about what happens with undeliverable 1099s. How do you get copy requests to me, and how are they delivered to the vendor? Volunteer payments. I know not a lot of you deal with volunteers. Those that do need this information. Prior year corrections, the EO99 report, which is not directly a 1099 report, more of a W-2 potential impact report. We're going to talk about the 1099 checklist that is sometimes useful for the agencies to run through to make sure everything is good. And then processing timelines. Reporting informations to DAS, agency, some little questions that I get asked every year, and then a wrap up. We are going to have a break right along, I believe it's slide number 50. We'll assess at that time how long it will be, but we will have a break in this training. That being said, off to the races we shall go. 1099 IRS changes announced this year. Absolutely none. For the first time since 2016, the IRS actually left the 1099 miscellaneous and 1099 NEC alone, and there were no changes announced. So that is awesome for us because we're still trying to catch up from some of those changes that they've announced in past years. I mean, we made it, we did them, but we're still kind of breathless about them. So I'm so excited about that. So no changes this year regarding the rules. So let's start right into how does R-Stars programming work for the vendors to receive a 1099. So basically, R-Stars looks at three things and to determine what vendors will produce a 1099 automatically. And the first thing is the vendor must be eligible to receive a 1099. So on the 52 screen, the 1099 indicator must equal Y. The second thing is when you're coding your payments, the comp objects, which are on the D10 screen, need to be anything other than N. If it's other than N, then it also will give you a form number or a form, whether M or N. And then we must meet IRS box minimums of $600. So vendors must be eligible to receive a 1099. This is a 52 screen. You'll notice right in the middle, kind of opposite of alt vendor FID, it says 1099 indicator. This must equal Y. If that is an N, game over. The vendor is not going to be reported to the 1099. It has been predetermined that they won't receive a 1099. The next thing we need to look at is the comp object D10. Anything other than N, in this case, this is a comp object for an NEC. And you'll notice down kind of at the bottom, it says 1099 indicator is 1, and that means box 1. And the form is an N, which is NEC. And then this is an example of a 1099 for a miscellaneous. In this example, its comp object is it 4901? The comp object, the 1099 indicator is 6, which is box 6, medical. And the form is M. And then meets the IRS minimum of $600. In this example, this vendor is going to receive in box 1, $111,000 reported. It says right here, total payments, IRS box 1. All transactions are on the cumulative payment table. And that's January 1st of 2023 to 1/31/23. And the cumulative payment tables include warrants, transfers, which are the BT transfers, cancellation. So when you do stop payments and or cancellation, that impacts the cum payment table. Backup withholding, if there is any. So far this year, we have no backup withholding. Yay. And direct deposits have a slightly different date because it has to do with receipt of payments or constructive receipt of payments. And this year, the dates are 12/20, any payments made from 12/29/20, 12/29, oh, that should be 22 to 12/27/23. Anyway, so there is a little discrepancy there. Then, per the IRS reportable, vendors include individuals and sole proprietors, partnerships, LLC or LLPs, attorneys at law, including all corporations, AAL or PC, medical service providers. So if they're a MD, PhD, RN, physical therapist, a nurse practitioner, physician's assistant, even if they are incorporated, they will receive a 1099, and trusts. Non-reportable vendors are corporations, with the exception of attorneys and medical corporations. Non-for-profits, if we have proof, or if they are registered as a non-for-profit on the IRS website, and we can determine that at the time of TIN matching. Government entities, all government entities, city, county, state, federal, are non-reportable. Employee reimbursements, if it's appropriate, those are reported on a W-2, and that is part of the E099 report. And then foreign vendors, those are reported on an absolutely different form called a 1042 report form.
Arlene, may I interrupt for a moment?
Yes, you may.
Can you go back 2 slides? We have a question came in that asks if the cumulative payment table dates are correct.
January 1st of 2023 and 1/31/23. Oh, 12/31/23. Good catch.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this needs to be changed to 22 here. We will, by the way, we've made some changes since we sent I might as well say this now, since we sent the PDF out yesterday, and that will be uploaded, the corrected PowerPoint in PDF will be put out on the SFMS website after the training. And we'll get all these little things corrected. So thank you for pointing that one out. I didn't even see it. I knew it was 12/31/23 though. Anyway, okay, so back. Okay, so okay, got through that. Didn't I? Per IRS non-reportable. Yes, got through the non-reportables. Okay. Recap of the conditions to receive a 1099 then is the vendor must be reportable as per the 52 screen with a 1099 indicator of why, must be paid and reportable comp object, and those are all in the D10. So we're not looking at the agency object codes, we are looking at the comp object codes. The aggregate form and box amount must equal $600. And if any condition is not met, the vendor does not receive a 1099 form and the income is not reported to the IRS and or DOR. Doesn't mean they shouldn't claim it as income on their taxes. It just means that we are not reporting it as income to the IRS. Now, we have included the slides for 1090 D10 profiles that are reportable. So these are the 1099s that are reportable for 1099 miscellaneous. And there are honestly far fewer of those than 1099 miscellaneous, which have 4 pages of eligible comp objects. So if you need to make an adjustment, you can. Which screen is the cumulative payment table? I don't know that one off the top of my head for the cumulative payment table. You can always look at the vendor. I use the vendor, I believe it's the 85 screen a lot when I'm answering vendor questions. So that's always a good screen to look at because you can look at it by ZE, BT, VP, VI, those sorts of things. Hope that helped answer that question. It seems like it's like 99 or something like that, but I'm not really sure. It's not a screen that I look at very often. Anyway, 1099 D10 profiles for the 1099 NEC. If you're making corrections, these are very useful comp objects and easier to look at list than perhaps scrolling through the D10 screen itself looking for what you're looking for. So any questions regarding the system and how the system comes up with these, with what is reportable and how a vendor is automatically receive a 1099?
Doesn't look like we have any payments coming in. I would say that the 87 and the 88 screen have cumulative vendor payment information.
Perfect. Thank you, Julie. Okay, tax year 2023 1099 looks suspiciously like 22 because there were no changes this year. So that's what a miscellaneous 1099 looks like, and that's what we produce and send out in the mail. Let's go through it, what the different boxes are that the state of Oregon uses in our submission. So we use box 1, rent, which is real estate rental unless paid to a real estate agent. Machinery and equipment rental. So if the machinery is part of a contract and includes both the use of the machine and the operator, rentals should be prorated between rent machine box 1 on the miscellaneous form. And if you can determine what the operator charged, that needs to go box 1 on the NEC form. NEC stands for non-employee income, essentially. Then we have pasture rental. I know that happens occasionally. Operating leases, coin operating amusements, and rental assistant payments made directly to the owners of the housing projects. Now, if you report the rental assistance and you give it to the person who then gives it to the next person, that isn't reportable. But if you're paying directly to the owner of the complex, then that is reportable. I know sometimes that's confusing. Other income, which is prizes and awards, only when no services are performed or to receive these prizes and awards. A deceased employee's wages, this happens almost yearly. Punitive damages, claimant settlement payments where there are no bodily injury. That's risk management, sorry. Report, and then that is the report of the gross amount in the payment of that. The vendor must then work out with their attorney what the attorney fees are as related to that claim. Then payments to a dependent care provider, and only if providing care for a relative. So if they're providing care for a non-relative, then it's not reportable. We also include lodging. So payments to hotels, motels, B&Bs, it's payment to lodging facilities and lodging businesses, regardless of the person who benefits from the lodging. If the lodging is paid for by a contractor or a consultant, the payment is reported to them on a 1099 NEC box 1. It's part of the services contractually, there are contractual obligations to them. This is part, and it's part of the non-employee compensation. This compensation can be offset as a business exempt expense by that consultant. If reimbursing a state employee, then the payment is not reportable to the employee on a 1099 miscellaneous form. There again, it may be reportable on a W-2. There again, because it's an employee, it's on an EO99 report. Box 4 is federal income tax withheld. This year, we did not have any federal income tax withheld. A couple years ago, when we were doing the COVID payments, we did have box 4 reportable income tax withheld for the ones that I think it was the Get the Vax campaign, but nothing this year. No backup withholding amounts. It's still 24% if it was a domestic vendor, and then the box that it was coded to originally would have the full amount, and then the income withheld would be the box 4. Example, if we paid out $1,000 with backup withholding or with federal tax income withheld, we would report $1,000 in the box per the D10 that the invoice was paid on, and then we would report $240 in box 4. Box 6 is medical and healthcare payments. There is no corporation exemption for this box. Physicians or other suppliers or other supplier or provider of medical or healthcare services. Physical therapists, massage therapists, physiotherapists, all the therapists are that have been identified as healthcare providers are eligible for box 6. It would include things like pre-employment physicals, drug screening, expert testimony. These are all box 6. Counseling, mental health, drug and alcohol treatment, diagnostic, and therapeutic services. It includes charges for injections, drugs, dentures, and similar items. In these cases, the entire payment is subject to the information returns. Payments made by medical and healthcare insurance under the health, accident, and sickness insurance programs. You are not required to send a 1099 miscellaneous to a tax-exempt hospital if they're a non-for-profit, and or an extended care facility, or a facility owned and operated by the government. So do not include payments for prescription drugs unless it's associated with a service. So you go in and you get your physical and you get your flu shot, and it's one bill. The flu shot, the bill for the flu shot would be included in the services. But if the flu shot is done separate and distinct from the other, then the bill for the flu shot is not included. Hope that makes sense. Box 10 is gross proceeds paid to an attorney. These are the attorney fees performed for services other than the state, they represented other than the state of Oregon. Payments to an attorney and Joe Public. No corporate exemptions on this box. This box is unique in that payments will be reported twice, can be reported twice for in a 1099 miscellaneous file. It can be reported, say you pay $10,000 for a settlement to the attorney. You can, the box 10 will be $10,000 for that attorney, and $10 box 3 for their client.
Carlene?
Yes.
On slide 30, the question is this for any government or just federal? At least I thought it was slide 30. Perhaps it was.
Governments aren't reportable. Any government. Governments aren't reportable, are non-reportable in and of themselves.
Okay, thank you. Antonia, let us know if you have any further question on that. Thank you, Carlene.
1099 2023 NEC looks the same as last year, no changes that we need to go over. NEC is really simple. It's just really 2 boxes that we look at. Box 4, which we've already talked about, and box 1, which is non-employee compensation. And this is payments to someone who is not your employee for services in the course of trade of your business. It can be to an individual, a partnership, an estate, and in some cases, a corporation. And payments and to the payee of at least $600 per year. It's basically payment for any services that is not medical in nature, because that would be box 6, 1099 miscellaneous. Includes parts and materials used to provide the services, professional service fees, including attorney fees, if they're representing the state of Oregon. State of Oregon agency and is the client. Independent contractor or volunteer. Payments to care providers who care for persons other than relatives. And then operator charge included with machinery rental. Now remember, payments to care providers who were relatives were on the MISC. Care providers other than relatives is on an NEC. Fees paid to one professional to another. Payments for witnesses or experts in a legal adjudication. Non-employee entertainers. It's basically exchange of services. If we have some exchange of services, I'll do this for this. I'll provide this service if you'll provide that service for me. Taxable fringe benefits for non-employees. Amounts in excess of 14 cents per mile paid to a volunteer driver You're going to have to drive an awful lot to get to that $600 minimum, but it can happen. They're going to be potentially meals if there is no overnight stay, and payments made to vendors or volunteers are NEC reportable unless it is necessary for the payee to be away from home overnight, and then they're not reportable at all. Fixed asset charges reported on a 1099 NEC. Occasionally, charges can be both 1099 NEC reportable and capitalized as a fixed asset. Cost to prepare a site to receive a new piece of equipment. Cost to repair capital assets if the repair will materially add value, life, or functionality to the asset. These are all services. Costs may be charged to capital outlay account and capitalized, but then we need to report them also as 1099 reportable for services. If the costs are charged as services and supply accounts, then capitalized. Please use Comptroller Objects 5105 through 5905 on these. All the costs are to be captured on the 1099 NEC reporting and the capitalization, and accounts payable to personnel responsible for 1099 NEC reporting should be collaborated with the fixed asset accountants to verify that all reportable sums are captured for reporting. So you do need to do little side work on that. Any questions regarding the boxes or the information that's held in those boxes? Okay.
Looks like we're good.
I think we're good. Where are we? Oh, we're moving right along. I don't even know what time it is. Okay. Okay, this is kind of the meat here, is the DAFR 7940 report and the NE40 reports. The DAFR 7940 report is used for the 1099 miscellaneous, or is associated with the 1099 miscellaneous, and the NE40 is tied to the NEC, 1099 NEC. And these reports will include all payments, transactions to vendors that have been identified as reportable to the IRS with a Y. Now, these are the vendors that have been identified with a Y on the 52 screen in the 1099 indicator field. This includes all payments, reportable payments, and non-reportable payments and BT transactions. The payments to non-reportable vendors are not included on either of these reports. So if they have been already ruled out, remember my first real meaty screen was if the 52 indicator, if the 52 screen has a 1099 indicator of N in that box, that's end of game. It's over. They're not going to be on this report. They're not going to be reported to the IRS. So we really kind of just want to shuffle them right aside and not pay attention to them unless you believe that they were miscoded. So what is contained on these reports? It contains the vendor number, but it does not include the SSN or FEIN for them. It looks at boxes, it'll identify boxes 1, 3, 4, 6, and 10 that are all reportable on the 1099 MISC on DAFR using DAFR 7940. 1 and 4 are the boxes reportable on 1099 NEC, and these you'll find on the DAFR NE40 reports. When you see an N with a dollar amount, that is the non-reportable dollar amount. They were identified with the comp objects. Comp objects and agency objects are both on that report. So comp objects, of course, is the D10 profile. Agency object is the D11 profile. It's going to give you the payment amounts on for each transaction, and then totals by comp object, IRS box, and vendor number. It's going to give you the CURDOC number and suffix for each of these transactions, and it's also going to give you the ZE documents or the liquidation documents. Now, it's always fun to read the ZE document number because it's kind of fun to how it contains the payment date. So example is it's a ZE30411R. This means that the document number is from 2023, month 4, April, on the 11th in the regular cycle. This may be helpful when reviewing and comparing the payments issued since the last DAFR 7940. We have already sent out two printings of the 7940 and 2 of the NE40. I hope you're all pulling them down. They're all should be electronically available on the report website. If you have any questions and you haven't seen it, please contact either your SFMS analyst or myself, and we can help you with that. We're looking at RefDoc numbers and suffix, and these are the VPVX, VI, BT, BIs. These are all the document RefDoc number starts. And then we're looking at total payments by comp object, by IRS box number, by vendor number, vendor name will be there. And then when requesting a manual correction to reportable amounts, always use the total payments in the IRS box as the change from amount. And that's on using these reports because there might be, and you want to change only what's to your agency, not what's for someone else's. We do have vendors that cross agency lines, as I am. They might be paid by multiple agencies. And that's, you just want to correct yours. You don't want to be responsible for someone else's. Okay, the vendor name could be appear to be non-reportable in that it might say corp or incorporated, INC. And vendors who have not returned a valid W-9 are considered reportable entities and will be included in the DAFR 7940 and the NE40. These are noted on the 52 vendor profile. So if you see a vendor type of 8 or 9, this means they have not returned a valid W-9 form, and the profile cannot be updated without a W-9 form. And they will be reported to the 7940. It's always better to over-report than under-report. We don't want to be caught. There are no fees or fines associated with over-reporting. There are fees and fines associated with under-reporting. Okay, any questions on that? No? Okay, I'm going to go move forward then. SFMS responsibilities. Yeah, we have responsibilities just like the agencies. We are responsible for printing and mailing all original and corrected forms in a timely fashion for 1099 miscellaneous and 1099 NEC to eligible vendors. We do federal and state electronic filing, and we have to meet all reporting deadlines for the reporting of the forms. For 1099 NEC, our date is January 31st of 2024 for reporting the NEC. And we have a couple months longer for the miscellaneous forms. We have till March 31st of 2024. Even though all the forms are mailed out by January 31st. Agency responsibility. We rely on you for the accuracy of all the information provided for 1099's miscellaneous and NEC. And then we look for assurance through review of your DAFR reports. And then be mindful of BTU transactions and canceled payments and their timing impacts. And we'll talk about that in a bit. We also rely on you that all payments issued are, you should be aware that all payments issued through an agency subsystem and not through the R-Star system, you are responsible for those 1099s and to be filed with the vendor as well as the IRS. And then other 1099s that you need to be aware of that you might be responsible for are scholarship or qualified tuition programs, which is on a 1099-Q, and or grant payments, which is a 1099-G. I don't have any real concrete experience with the Q or the G, so I am not the best resource for those documents. However, I do know people in the agencies that have dealt with them for a number of years and can, if it's the first time you're filing them, I can put you in touch with those people to perhaps help you through those. But I personally don't have a lot of experience. Also, agency responsibilities. If there are any payments penalties assessed due to statements not being generated and reported to the IRS, and these can be up to $250 per statement. It's on the agency. It's not on DAS, unless it's DAS that creates it. DAS, not SFMS. Incorrect reporting is $30 to $100 per statement that can be assessed. I've never seen it assessed, but it can be assessed. And we need to provide correct payee statements without reasonable cause, reporting in correct boxes on the correct form, and reporting the correct amounts. This doesn't mean if we have to make corrections that we're going to be penalized. It just means if the returns that we submit to the IRS are substantially incorrect, like they look at a certain percentage. If we go over that percentage, then that could kick either an audit or these penalties. Intentional disregard of payee statements or requirements are $530 per statement, and that doesn't have a maximum. So they don't, there's no ceiling on those. The rest of them have ceilings. So it's basically intentionally disregarding, going, we don't really need to report 1099s this year. You know, let's give the taxpayers a break.
Carlene?
Yes.
Oh, questions, perfect time. Scholarships for employees, are those taxable?
There again, I'm not really your best resource for that. You're going to have to research that.
All right, thank you.
So my guess, if it's employee related, it might have W-2 ramifications. But like I said, as far as 1099-Qs and 1099-Gs, I am not your best resource. I really, I have never dealt with them in my life. But I do know people who can. So if you need to touch base with someone, I can go there. The other place is the irs.gov might be able to help you, especially if you search for 1099-Qs. Generally speaking, they always have publications that help you through some of these explanations of who's eligible, who's not, what's what. But I don't know the publication number. Okay, anything regarding the reports? Do you have any questions? So if you were to look at a report, do you think you could, what we're trying to get at is, can you at least start to walk yourself through looking at these reports and maybe identifying some issues? So give me a thumbs up. Are we here? Yes, no, okay. Okay, I got a thumbs up. Hopefully. If you always have questions, you can always call me. Ooh, lots of thumbs ups. Validation. Okay, I think we're at a break. right now. It's 2:14. We go, I think, until 4 o'clock. We're about halfway through. So we've been at this for, oh boy, I've been going through this too fast. Am I going too fast? Or am I pacing myself correctly? I would say let's go ahead and take a 15-minute break and come back at 2:30. Do you agree, Julie?
That is fine with me.
Okay, let's take a 15-minute break and I'll meet you back at 2:15. Or 2:30, sorry, 2:30. I am back. It looks like Sandra Meyer asked a question. Sandra, are you with us? Or are you still on break? Give me a thumbs up if you're here, if you could. Okay. I'm going to zip back. Is there anything in, oh gosh, I wish Julie was here. She could unmute your mic.
I am here. Let me do that.
Because I think that was a good, frankly speaking, a really good question.
Okay, Sandra, would you see if you can unmute your mic now?
Got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hi, Sandra. That's a really good question. You're welcome. Are you new to that agent or are you new to the state?
I'm actually new to the position. I'm not new to the state, but
okay. So a number one OCB, Commission for the Blind. Correct.
Yes.
Okay. And I will say this because I worked really hard with I'm trying to remember what her first name is, but it's Bataki.
Oh, Maxine.
Maxine. I
Yeah.
worked with her a lot last year. So she's a great resource on reading these reports, I believe. I think I helped her last year on these, but what you're looking at is, especially for Commission of the Blind, did the any of your, what I found with Commission of the Blind, you're looking for your clients that accidentally got are on didn't get coded correctly on the 52 screen, and so they're showing up on your reports as reportable. Is a big thing because
So
you don't. Someone threw up a thumbs up. That must be Maxine. So look for your clients because clients are not reportable.
Okay.
Your especially yours. And you're looking for if they're there, if they are, then we're going to go right in the next section. We're going to talk about how to make changes because right now it's prior to December close, which happens in January.
Right.
But if somebody slips by and we, it can happen. It's not the end of the world. We will then be talking about how to make those change requests. But I would really start for your agency in particular, looking at the vendors themselves and making sure that there are no clients listed on your reports. And I don't think your reports are very big because you're a particularly small agency.
Right. Right.
But
so
you, by the same token, you don't want to report something to, especially to that vulnerable population going, oh, here's a 1099, congratulations, and going, oh no, we issued that in error. So yeah, that's where I would start with you.
Okay.
Is looking at the names and are they set up on the 52 screen correctly? Because at this point, if we change the 52 screen from a Y to an N, then they're not reportable. It ends right there.
Okay.
And nothing's written in stone right now, because part of what happens, and here again, I'm jumping ahead. Part of what happens on December close in January is the 43M and N are populated, and that's really where it gets sticky because that's when they will be reported.
Okay, and I'm sure it's hard to correct with the IRS, right?
No, it's not.
No. Oh, good.
It's just more of a, it's let's do it right the first time versus making the correction. As you know, at most of us accountants, if we make a mistake, it's much harder to correct it than to do it right get it right in the first place. But it's not the end of the world if they are if they are reported to the IRS and then we back it out 2 weeks later.
Okay, so what I'm looking at on my DAFR report, I see my my vendor numbers, and then I see my COB numbers.
COBs, yep.
And, yeah, and then basically I just want to make sure those numbers, those COB numbers are the ones reportable that you discussed.
Right,
The service is reportable. And
right.
then,
I would, yeah. And if
Yeah.
you can get a hold of someone within your agency who might have a client list that you can compare it against your reports, that might help you.
Okay. All
You
right.
know, they might not have the vendor number, but they certainly would have the name.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right.
Oh, we're at 2:34. Sorry, I was answering a question for Commission of the Blind. Sandra is apparently new to her position in the agent. OCB doesn't focus on the comp object as much as we do agency object. Yes, that's true, but it's the comp object that drives the 1099. That's Kat Martin. Anyway, Sandra Myers was asking a question regarding how, when you're looking at the report, what should she be focusing on? So just to catch the rest of you up if you just came back. Okay. Okay, let's continue on. I hope you had a good break. Changes identified prior to January 12th of 2024. Basically what you want to do is when you're looking at your DAFers, 7940 or NE40, is you want to look at, is the vendor name reasonable to receive a 1099? If it has LLC, it's an automatic receive 1099, even if they are considered an S Corp under the 1099, under their ruling of LLC. We just take a blanket across the LLCs and say you're all reportable. It just covers us. What you want to look at is look at the comp objects. Do they seem reasonable? If an incorrect comptroller object is used, was it used on an expenditure? If it was an incorrect comp object and it should have been a reportable comp object versus a non-reportable, in this case, it looks like these are non-reportables. Maybe they should have been reportable. Now is the time to use a TC 415, 416, BT transfer, dated, and you want to date these either 12/31/23 or earlier, and and include the vendor number to reclass the transaction so the change can be reflected on on your next report. And I know you, OC, yeah. But there are some cautions that you should be aware of. Changes identified prior to January 12th of 2024, which is December close date. All T codes are 415, 416 transactions. With a 2024 effective date will not be on this year's. So if you accidentally put a January date on as an effective date, that's going to go to next year's DAFR 7940 or NE40 report. And it's not going to affect 2023's taxes like you think it will. The effective date must be no later than December 31st of 2023. Changes identified prior to also changes reporting can only be processed before December month end closed. So if you find something, say you come back after the 3-day weekend and you go, oh, I looked at my report and this didn't go through like I thought it did. I need to do another 415, 416 change. At this point, That option is out the door unless you need to do it for an accounting change. You can still do accounting changes for transactions that were in 2023, but you need to leave off the vendor number, because the moment you put a vendor number in and you make it a 2024 thing, we've put it back into tax year 2024. Because remember, cumulative payment table picks up those BTs. And anything entered January 2nd through the 12th must have the December date, and do not process a 415-416 transfer for a 23 transaction that includes the vendor number after this date, or you're impacting 2024 1099 reporting. And it's really easy to do. It happens every year. But although last year you guys were all really, really good about not doing this. 1099 change request forms are to be used after January 12th. We'll start accepting those the Tuesday after. So what, the 16th, 17th? Use either the 1099 miscellaneous change request form or the NEC change request form. It depends which form you want to impact. I do not accept a 1099 MISC change request form if the change should be on the NEC. If you're changing amounts, you need to use this. If you're adding if you're adding amounts to the 1099 form, if you're removing a payment amount to the 1099, so up or down, or moving payment amounts to a different box. And then, or changing the vendor TIN, that can also occur. You need to email those completed forms to my email address, which is carlene.hancock@das.oregon.gov. And it needs to come from if you've taken the class, or if you're a recognized contact for your agency for 1099s, I will accept those. Anybody else, I have received them from vendors. They have pulled them off the website. I do not act on the vendor making their own changes. So this is what the form looks like. Basically, I want your agency name and number, and you just have to give me the 3 digits. So for DAS, it would be DAS 107. Requested by, and this is where the who's requesting it, date, and then I want the authorized an authorized signature. Generally speaking, that is the I have a contact list for 1099s for your agency, and or it's going to be an accountant position 3 or higher. Phone number, vendor name, vendor number, and the year that you want it changed. So that would be for this year, it would be 2023. If it's for an earlier tax year, we can do those, but they will be done. I will collect them and they will be done after the 2023, all of the 2023 scheduled submissions are out the door. So it's right around May 1st, we'll start looking at those. And then I want a reason for the change, because please don't leave me hanging here. I'm a curious individual. It's like, why am I making this change? What happened that it wasn't identified earlier? This is for the 1099 miscellaneous. You want to tell me what box you're changing. So if you're changing box, it's being listed currently as other income, and it really should be rent. You'll take the other income, put the amount that from your 7940 report for your agency on the from, we want to change that from to the to amount, and that can be anywhere from $5 to 0, or whatever the range is, what you want to change it from, and you want that to. And then if you need to change the box, it's the starting point. We didn't report innings, but we need to add $600 to it. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, and it comes time for you to fill out the manual change request, please contact me. I don't mind walking you through this process. For the NEC report, it's very similar, and you'll notice that there are only 2 boxes. So really, we're only concerned with box 1 this year because as of right now, there is no backup withholding or federal income tax withheld. And just changing amounts, changing, it could be that the vendor, there were changes within the vendor. But it's the same thing. We're looking for all of that same information and box only box 1. If a vendor should not be reported for a 1099, MIS or NEC, and the payment should not be reportable, please submit the 1099 change request form and change the dollar from what your agency reported and reduce the amount on the change to 0 if appropriate. The amount of the change will determine the difference between the from and the amount listed for your agency only. So if another agency paid this person and you're not aware of it, it's aggregate in the R-Star system. We will only lower it or raise it for your directions. So if, as an example, there's an aggregate payment of $1,200, say Justice paid $600 and DAS paid $600. Well, DAS, oops, they didn't use the right comp object and on theirs, and it was really a non-reportable event. They want to take theirs from, they're going to say from 600 to 0, then that box is going to be changed down to from the 1,200 originally reported to $600 because Justice had that $600. If that makes any sense. So it's your agency only that you're looking at. You're looking at the final 7940 report or any 40 report to determine what your agency's reported. And use the IRS. This is where the IRS box total number on that those reports for the change from amount. So that's the starting amount. If a change is due to the vendor organizational change. So sometimes this happens, the vendor will get a 1099 and they go, oh, wait a minute, we're no longer reportable, or we've gone from non-reportable to reportable. That happened last year twice. The vendor will be required to submit documentation for when the change occurred. So if they change to incorporated or non-for-profit status, we need to know when this occurred, because we need the proof of date or proof of date of sale of the entity in case they sold it to someone and it's supposed to be totally someone else. Even if they kept the name, they should have a different, the new owner should have a different EIN number. And we need a valid W-9 form to make that change. That makes sense to everyone? Yeah? Okay, and then add reporting for vendor after January 12th. If a vendor payment needs to be included, but was not, we need to verify the vendor was included in how the vendor was set up on the 52 profile. And if not, we need to add the vendor to the 52 profile and submit an appropriate change request form. So if they've changed from an SSN to an EIN or EIN to SSN, it needs to sync up, and we may need then 2 change request forms, one for the one that's outgoing and one for the one that's incoming, or we may need to make, or if they're changing from reportable to non-reportable, we just need the one to change them down to 0. So these change request forms are not that tricky, but sometimes the situations are a little sticky, I should say. If you're changing a vendor number for reporting after January 12th, process may require 2 change request forms. One 1099 change request form for the incorrect vendor number, and it changed from from whatever was reported by your agency to 0, and then one change request form for the correct vendor number, if it's applicable, from 0 to $1. Or if you've halfway through had already picked it up, change it from the dollar amount to a different dollar amount. That can also be, these two forms should be sent together. And if an agency has a large number of changes, 10 or more per form type. So if you have 10 or more NEC changes or 10 or more miscellaneous changes, these may be submitted on a spreadsheet with permission from SFMS. Don't just make up your own form. I already have the forms in place that I will send you that I need completed, that have all the information necessary to make this change. But if you have 10 or more, please contact me so that I can get those the forms to you. And it's a lot easier than filling out 10 different forms or 20 different forms. But I do want permission. I want the permission first. If you have a vendor profile change that needs to be updated, that we have found out after the fact, you need to contact Tammy Lyons, and her email is sfms1vendor@dasoregon.gov. And then please use the vendor change request form for all changes and updates for that. So if we find out after the fact that a vendor has been accepting payments, and they didn't realize that they didn't change something with the state of Oregon, this is the time to make that change. And there again, might be two correction forms. We do have some common vendor issues. If you received information that the vendor name is incorrect, all TIN numbers must have a valid match with the vendor name on the IRS match website. Because we TIN match every single vendor. If the vendor TIN number is changed during the year, please report the vendor number that was paid up to that date where the ID was changed with the IRS. If any other date, then 1/1/23. So midway through the year, if they're midway through the year, say June 1st, they change over. And all the payments made up from January to June 1st are on that old vendor ID. And then June forward would be on the new vendor ID. And those will probably have to be changed with a 415, 416, at least prior to January 12th. After January 12th, then of course the change can be done as a manual change. Anyway, update the 52 with the updated vendor information, new EIN. This may also change the vendor to an ineligible report. And cross-reference vendor numbers will automatically roll the payments into the current valid vendor number. So let Tammy know if this is something that should be tied together for IRS purposes, and we'll work together to make sure that that happens. TIN number is changed in the previous year, but did not get updated. This happens, it does happen. It's just flat out, it does happen. If it wasn't updated, if we received no word last year after issuing a tax year 2022 1099, State of Oregon's stance is we will not make a change for 2022 to get it onto that vendor number. We reported it to the vendor number that we paid. And we don't backdate. They can work with their tax accountants to get it, or tax preparers to get it where they need to get it. But we take a stance that we're not going to make those corrections for 2022 or 2021 because we weren't notified in a timely fashion. Had they called us during tax season 2022, that's a different story. But if they did not contact us during 2022 to alert us to that, they've pretty much had 11 months to get it there. And we're not going to back on that. Anyway, all updated vendor information needs to be on the 52 for any tax year 2023 changes, and we will honor those. Vendor and TIN numbers. Payments made to an incorrect vendor. If a correction cannot be processed, the payment is reported to is reportable. Okay. This happens too all the time that the payment was made to a vendor, and we look at who we paid, who accept payment, who received the money, who redeemed the payment. That is the person that receives the 1099. You may have intended to pay so-and-so, but because they didn't get the money, they weren't paid. That's not who received the money. It's the person who receives the money that and redeems the money that gets the 1099. Payment was made to the right vendor, but the wrong vendor number. If that's the case, then we can do a 415-416 transfer. If it's identified prior to January 12th, if it's after January 12th, then it's going to be a manual correction using 1099 MISC or 1099 NEC correction forms, whichever is appropriate. If a vendor appears to have incorrect coding on the 52 profile, verify the following. Number one, is it a corporation or non-profit that was coded as 1099 eligible? And it should be 1099 indicator of N. If they have a vendor type of 8 or 9, we have not received a W-9 from them, and they are reportable. Remember, that was from an earlier section. So you need to look at that too. So don't just assume because there's Corp or Inc. in their name and we're reporting them that we're going to back away from that. If we have not received a valid W-9 from them, they are reportable. Now, if you send us a valid W-9, and they are not reportable, then we can back out. But if they don't, if the vendor has not returned a valid W-9, they will still be coded as reportable. No vendor coding change is necessary. Attorney is coded incorrectly as not reportable, then send a vendor change request form to correct as soon as possible, and also send a manual change request to me so I can get them reported out as soon as possible. Changes on the vendor profile may require revised 1099 miscellaneous or 1099 NEC forms to be generated. And vendor name updates after January 12th. We'll also need a manual. We'll change it in the system, and we will then change it on the IRS form. And vendor organization types also, all of these will require manual updates. So all 1099 MIS and NEC change request forms are required for all reporting changes after January 12th. So easier for you after January 12th in a way, because I make all the changes. Before January 12th, you make all the changes with a 415-416. So after December month-end close, all changes to 1099 filings must be made manually by SFMS, me. And so the agency needs to complete a 1099 miscellaneous and 1099 NEC change request form. To move amounts between boxes or potential forms, You can change reportable amounts to the correct TIN numbers. You can remove reportable amounts, and we can add reporting for a vendor not already on the file. Agencies are responsible for making the T codes prior to January using a 415, 416, and including the vendor number in those changes using a date of December 31st or earlier. After, if you make a 415, 416 change for any payments made in 2023 or any of that, please leave the vendor number off the transaction, and this will keep it out of the 2024 tax year. Any questions regarding changes made to vendors or how to make changes once the 1099s have been submitted and mailed out?
There are a couple questions.
Okay.
You mentioned that there has to be, that someone sending in a change has to be on your list of contacts or authorized individuals. And
yeah, if they're the authorized signer, yes.
Yes, and there was a question if they can get a copy of who's on that list, or how do they find out who is currently?
If they will just email me, I'll let them know who currently is my my contact for that agency.
Okay.
Actually, by them taking the class, I consider them a contact just because they've taken the class. Unless their agency prefers an accountant 3 or higher to sign these.
All right. So Kevin, you've attended the class. You can probably send in a change request. If you want to verify that with Carlene, you can reach out and ask for the email.
Is this Kevin Pepler?
No,
or no, it's Michael Pepler. Kevin.
Wilmingham.
Oh, okay. Wilmingham. Yeah. Oh, Kevin, go ahead and reach out to me with your agency number, and I'll let you know who is currently listed as your agency contact.
And then we did have some confusion on a broken link on one of our slides. So we will be correcting that before we post the PowerPoint presentation online.
What page was it, please?
I have it noted. I got it noted for you. And Kevin, thank you for supplying that in the chat. And then we had a question about contacting Tammy. Do they have to be an authorized vendor contact before they contact Tammy to make vendor changes?
It's always best if you're an authorized changer for that. But if you let her know that you're doing this for 1099 purposes, sometimes she'll let it slide through. But my assumption is if you're making changes to for a vendor payments and such, you are already listed on her contact list.
All right. Let me know
that assumption, it'll get you in trouble every time.
Venus, let us know if you have any further questions on that. And Kat Martin wants to know if they don't have appropriate staff at the agency about some of these taxability questions, is there anyone at DAS that they can reach out to?
Oh, they can always reach out to me.
All right. What are the dates when the DAFR 7940 and the DAFR NE40 are scheduled to be run? I believe that's
coming up.
Coming up. All right.
In a slide coming to you.
All right. Those are all the questions we have at this point. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, let's talk about undeliverable 1099s. It happens every year. People move, they don't let us know. Shocker. 1099s will be produced and mailed from PND to the name and address on the 52 screen. If you haven't noticed, the 52 screen is kind of the is Mecca for us. It's if you look at the 51 screen, it's 51 mail code 000, and it's going out the week of 1/22/24. It does not matter if the payment was made to a different mail code. SFMS or SFMA uses the parent profile, which is the 52 screen or the 51000. If a 1099 is returned as undeliverable, what SFMS does, this is our process. We will contact the paying agency to request that the vendor information be corrected on the 52 as soon as possible. I will let you know the vendor number, the vendor name, the form returned, and why it was returned, if it's given. We will enact, but in the meantime, I will go in behind the scenes and I will inactivate all associated mail codes for the vendor until the profile is brought up to date. So basically, in essence, I'm stopping the state of Oregon from paying that vendor until we get appropriate information to get their 1099 to them. SFMS will also update the vendor profile and remail the original 1099 form to the vendor and activate all the affected profiles previously inactivated. If a vendor requests a copy, oh, this is new. You're going to love this year. If a vendor requests a copy of 1099 miscellaneous or 1099 NEC, please confirm the vendor received a 1099 form from the state of Oregon prior to requesting resubmission to me in an email. And you're either going to look at your DAFR 7940 or any 40. The fastest way, if you have access, is the 43M or the 43N screen, and send a request and copy via email. Include the following information: the vendor number, the vendor name, the tax year requested, and verification that the address is correct on the profile. And this year, and just let you know that miscellaneous and NEC forms are held for 4 tax years. So currently we will have 3 tax years in electronic format, and 2019 is the last printed format that we have. But new for 2023, and this is just, I am so excited about this, I can hardly stand it. SFMS has made the changes to both 1099 forms where the vendor's EIN, a 9-digit EIN or social security number is now masked the first 5 digits. So only the last 4 digits are showing. And this allows for greater security for the mailed forms for the vendor, but it also allows us to email copies of the form for the vendor. Now, we can only do this for 2023 because the previous years, all of them are still unmasked. So if they ask for 23, 22, and 21, I'm still going to have to mail 22 and 21, but I can email 2023. This is a huge improvement, especially through, as we all know, working from home through the pandemic, and now really all of us have, I believe, the option to work from home in some capacity or not. It allows us to get that information to them much sooner versus Carlene saying, well, I'll be in the office on Monday. I can do it then. Or I'll be in the office and no, we can get those out now. But the one thing I want you to be aware of is I'm going to have, if they don't have a valid email address on that 52 screen, that allows us to get a valid email address on the 52 screen. Now, if that vendor is an ACH vendor, that is a whole nother kettle of fish. And if that vendor wants it sent to a different email address than what is on the 52 screen, And the PDA on that is DA. I will take the email address that you send me, knowing that you work with that vendor directly, if it is not the same. I don't want to change that ACH vendors because that's where their payments emails are sent to, and I don't want to disrupt that at all. So 2019 through 2022, those still need to be mailed. So verify the 52 screen is the correct address with the update. And tax year 2023, we still want to look at the 52 to make sure that the address is correct, because this is an opportunity to reach out and touch someone and verify that, but also get that email address. So I will start sending out email requests. I want to say midway through February. I want to allow them at least 2 weeks to receive their original 1099s. So I probably will not start sending out email copies until the 22nd of February. So if you need to write that down, that's great. I did not put that in our processing calendar, but I think this is going to be great. I think you guys are going to love it, because you don't have to wait for me to get back into the office to send these out. So yay! Happy days. Okay, let's talk about volunteer payments. Now, I know not all agencies have volunteers, but if you do, you need to be aware that meals are reportable to volunteers if there is not an overnight stay. So if they are driving someone on a volunteer basis to an appointment of some sort, and they stop and feed a client, or they have lunch with the client, and you reimburse them for that, that meal is now reportable to them. But if there was an overnight stay, it is not reportable to them. Volunteer drivers are not medical transport, so they are not box 6. And volunteers do not provide medical services, so again, they are not box 6. They are box 1 NEC. Volunteer payments, non-reportable travel comp objects for volunteers, we ask, and board members. When agencies do not want to split out meals and lodging on reimbursement basis, please use the below comp objects, or at least review and best utilize those. And you may reclass payments for volunteers or board members to these non-reportable comp objects before December month-end close. I know occasionally a board member slips through the cracks and they get reported. They're, again, not the end of the world. We just send me a manual correction. I will make that correction, and they will receive a corrected 1099 in the mail in 2 weeks. Prior year corrections. Kind of touched on this earlier. If you determine that a corrected 1099 MISC or NEC is needed for a prior year, send the appropriate manual change request form, specify and highlight the tax year, and then prior year corrections will be processed after 2023 is locked away at the end of April. So starting May, we will start doing prior years. I do want to touch base on one thing about prior year corrections. This happens occasionally. I won't say it happens every year, but a vendor will be sent a payment, say in 2022. It is then reported as lost or stolen, and the agency did a stop or stop pay on it in 2023 and reissued in 2023. If they received a 1099 in 2022, That is when the tax, that is when the 1099 is going to stay. Because at that point, if you made the payment in 2023 and you did everything in 2024, like all accounting, it's an in and out for 2024. So it's not going to be reported in 2024. Likewise, last year when it happened for a particular agency and a vendor received a 2022 1099 and the in and out was done, remember cumulative payment table. So the payment went on as a positive and then the cancellation essentially, or the stop pay canceled it out. So it was a zero. It's not going to show up on your reports as a reportable item for that correction year. So just realize if that happens, it is strongly suggested we don't make the correction manually for the past year and the current year. Hope that makes sense. Let me know if it doesn't, and I'll go through it with you. Been alluding to the E099 report. What this report is for is employees that are paid through R-Stars with a 1099 reportable comp object. And really, this is something employees will not receive a 1099. They are not eligible to receive a 1099 because they receive W-2s. IRS believes if you're paying an employee, they are an employee, and everything should go through that W-2 process. So no 1099 miscellaneous or NEC will be issued on an OR number. No Social Security or algorithm payments should be listed on a DAF or E099 report. If there are reportable payments made to an employee that did not pertain to their job, these payments should be reported can be reported on an NEC report. This can happen, particularly my best example is forestry. If an employee provides services through an established business not paid using a SSN, it can happen. Or the employee is added with their SSN because they're helping to say they're contracting with forestry to help fight fires. That is not their job as an accountant or through the Department of Forestry. That really is their side gig. Then they have clients. They do this on the side. It's a known fact. Forestry is contracted with them as that side gig. Then they perhaps can receive a miscellaneous or NEC. So completed an NEC change request and add the income to be reported. But it really should not come through their OR number. It should happen through their EIN or SSN number, if that's happening. Basically what you're looking for on these E099 report are reimbursements for employee travel. So the TA is a good example. And you're looking for if you did a travel advance, when they came back, did they recognize all of the monies that you paid them? And if they didn't, whatever they didn't account for is actually reportable as income to them on their W-2. Any fringe benefits or any awards that were not reported to the employee on Form 1099 miscellaneous, which they shouldn't have. Anyway, payments are also employee expenses, and if reportable after review, please report them to your payroll team as they would be included on the employee W-2 form. So really this E099 report is looking at employee payments, reportable comp objects that potentially could have changes and impacts to the W-2. Hope that makes sense. And that will be generated the 16th, and available electronically for you to review by agency on the 17th. If you have any questions at that time, give me a call. So let's go through the 1099 checklist for the agency. This is just a suggested checklist. It is not a requirement, but it is a pretty good thing to look at. You want to identify which vendors your agency uses that are 1099 miscellaneous or NEC reportable. You want to review the regulations, and going through this PowerPoint is a great way of doing it. To become familiar with what type of taxpayer identification numbers require in each type of entity and how to ask a payee for the correct number if something is determined to be incorrect. Review the reportable vendors for possible changes in name, address, and entity type. Contact vendors with possible changes to verify correct information on file or to update information to be accurate for reporting. That's a big pull and a big ask. So I understand if that can't be done. But if you can get corrected information in prior to January 12th or even the Friday after, and all the information is good going out, it can save time. But like I said, I know it's a big ask to contact vendors. Review vendor activity to verify reportable payments are coded to correct expenditure. If something looks grossly wrong, that's when if you know for a fact that you paid rent and it's being reported as other income or NEC 10 a non-employee compensation, and it needs to be box 1 miscellaneous, those are changes that can be identified, should be identified prior to January 12th and do a 415, 416. And so it's just looking for those kinds of errors. Review purchases to confer with other accounting staff to verify if these are reportable activity and has not been buried in capital outlay or expenditures. Verify adjustments made manually, such as warrants returned for cancellation or stop pay, are reflected on the 7940 or any 40 report. And correct any reporting for warrant cancel and stop pay corrections processed in 23 if they were issued in 22, unless you did a reissue. Processing timeline. 40 and any 40 reports are generated that will be generated the last working day of December. So I believe this year is December 30th, 2023, and December month end close, January 12th of 2024. We request that the report generated in January, which is the last one produced, is saved by the agency as previously noted in the training. These reports will continue to be used for any research or questions that arise from the reports. These reports will be accessible electronically by the agency as a control report, so a CNTL report. And if you do not receive your reports, contact your SFMS analyst or contact me as soon as possible so that we can assist you in downloading these reports. Yeah, let's get to the timeline. Let's talk January. Obviously, January 12th is a big day. It is the final day for the agency to make any online corrections using 415, 416. Then later that night, the 43M and the 43N screens will be populated for agency viewing after batch cycle. It's also the day that the 7940 and the NE40 reports are produced. On the 16th, run a report. We will run the report of agency vendor or employee vendors with reportable comp payments, which is the EO99 report. And EO99 report is now an agency electronic CNTL report. However, SFMS does keep one copy for files, and this will be viewable by the agency on the 17th. the morning of, because that happens during the batch cycle, the nightly batch cycle. On the 19th is the last day to request any changes to 1099 miscellaneous or NEC forms prior to the original printing and sending out to the vendors for that's due out I believe the week of January 22nd. On the 31st, SFMS, me, will electronically file the 1099 NEC reports electronically with the IRS and DOR. Through the IRS is the FIRE system, and DOR is the iWire system. February, we have a couple printings where we're making corrections on NECs. These are where the manual change request forms have come through. The 8th, I will send out corrected NEC forms and adjusted 1099 miscellaneous forms to the vendors to be mailed out to through P&D. The adjusted MISC forms is because we have not submitted to the IRS yet. So these are not corrected forms, they are adjusted forms. And so it hasn't been hardwired in yet. Then we do that on the 8th and the 22nd. And then on the 29th, I will file the first corrected 1099 NEC file with the IRS and DOR. In March, on the 7th and the 21st, there again, we're doing corrected, I'm producing corrected 1099 NEC forms and adjusted MISC forms to be mailed through P&D. And then on the 29th, I will file the first filing of the MISC electronic file with the IRS and DOR, and the second NEC electronic corrections file to IRS and DOR. Then April is the last month we really, if we need to send things out, if I receive manual correction requests, we will be doing those on the 11th and 25th for both corrected 1099 NEC and 1099 corrected MISCs to be mailed out to the vendors. And then April 30th, is the final planned filing for tax year 2023. And I will then send out the miscellaneous electronic file corrections for MISC and NEC. That doesn't mean in May, if you receive a correction request or any time between May and September, we can do them after that. It's just, these are the scheduled printings and electronic filings of them. And then of course in May, if I receive any prior year, that's when I start those files. Now this is just to let you know that please don't try to report any of your information returns to DAS. Department of Administrative Services does not process or maintain a system for entities to file 1099 forms with the state of Oregon. That has happened. They have tried to send them to us. You need to see Department of Revenue website for information regarding 1099 forms filing with them, and that is the iWire system. Okay, these are frequently asked questions every year. I wish one year I'm hoping to knock these out, but why does SFMS send vendor questions about reporting to agencies? And essentially we ask you, although I try manfully to answer all the questions, because my phone number literally is on every single 1099 that R-Stars generates to a vendor. So mine is the first phone call, and I I don't have the relationship with the vendor, so if I can't answer the question, I'm going to send you an email saying, yeah, I got a phone call and we have a question. SFMS does not have the documentation regarding what the payments were issued for, services or supplies or reimbursements, and SFMS does not change a reporting amount without the agency completing a change request form and signed by an agency authorized signer. So I will never take the information from the vendor going, oh, you're absolutely right. Let me make that change. I will not do that. I don't have the relationship. I don't have the backup documentation. I don't know how your agency determined that it did, but I'm trusting that you are doing your due diligence, which I know you are, and that you're giving me the right information. Or if I send that question forward going, well, gosh, we still have a question about this. When you send me back the response, that I always ask you to please reach out to the vendor to let them know if a 1099 is going to stand and why. Or if their change report, if a change is needed, you'll send me that change request. I'll get it done. You've seen the schedule, how often I do them, about every 2 weeks. And we'll get that pushed right on out the door. But because I don't have the relationship, I don't have the backup documentation, I will not make that change without your knowing about it and requesting it. Okay. This is a fun one. We have 2 outside consultants helping us with capital IT project. They are providing us consulting services, so I think they should get a 1099 miscellaneous, but the comp object we were instructed to use for the capital project is flagging as a 1099 no. I need some advice. Comp object used is 5915, other intangible assets less than 5,000. I want you first to check the 52 screen to confirm the vendor is 1099 eligible. If they are not, then no need to proceed further. This was actually directly taken from an email that I received from an agency. And the first thing I did is I looked at the 52 screen and was like, well, it really doesn't matter because the vendor's not eligible to receive a 1099. But let's play along and say, oh, yes, they are eligible to receive a 1099. That's when I push it back onto the vendor. If the vendor is eligible to receive a 1099, the agency needs to determine that services were paid for were greater than $600 for the prior year. If at that time a BT can be used, if it's prior to January 12th, BT 415, 416, using a comp object of 5105 through 5905, whatever's the most appropriate. If after January, submit a change request form to me and I'll make the change. Okay, we have a few contractors who travel reimbursement is turned into us to be reimbursed by federal government through a grant. Should we be coding their reimbursements such as out-of-state meals and lodging as a 1099 reportable? SFMS, and this is just a policy that I inherited. SFMS takes the position that these types of reimbursements should be reportable to an outside vendor as part of the services that they are providing. They are not employees, so they, if we're paying it for them, it's really part of their services. Short answer is yes, vendor should be reported as a 1099 NEC income to the vendor. Okay, and then can you confirm that rental equipment or machinery is 1099 miscellaneous box 1 reportable? I just wanted to clarify as to what that means. If we are to rent a forklift or a boom, that would be equipment. But I was wondering if this also applied to all rentals, such as tent rental for an event. Well, if the rent for a tent alone is alone on an itemized invoice was $600 or more, then yes, it would be box 1 rental income, 1099 miscellaneous. If the services to set up the tent were also for $600 or more on an itemized invoice, then that would be the services would be box 1 NEC. However, if the tent rental and setup were all done as one bill and not itemized for $600 or more, then it's going to be box 1, rental income, 1099 miscellaneous. This is how it's been determined. So wrap up, kind of to conclude, and we're at 3:30. So if we are a little bit ahead of schedule, where can you find more information on 1099s? Well, forms and publications are located on irs.gov. Link to download the forms and publications or other resources can also be found there. You can also contact me. But as you know, I have a disclaimer in place for 1099Gs and 1099Qs. I don't know a lot. So do you have any final questions or any final comments or anything that you feel that I need to be aware of? Or anything that I can just, in the past 90 slides, that I can just clarify for you a little further? If we have to contact for mainly services, but also, oops. Oh, we do have, okay. I saw, okay, Jenny, if we have a contract for mainly services, but also for travel, do you recommend using a service object or separating out between service and travel? If it's an outside contractor, I think it's all under services. But it's how your agency wants to handle that, Jenny. I really can't make that comment. I think it needs to be under 1099 NEC, box 1, all of it. But it's how your agency wants to handle it. And then I have Venus. Are the previous DAFR reports available on SFMS website? I believe, Venus, that the most current iteration of the DAFR reports are still on the website. They were done with the on the 17th. So for October. So if you go out there, you should be able to get it. Like I said, if you need help getting to them, oh, good. That is the most current. The next one that's set to print is December 29th. So that's the next one. So if you have the ones that we just did in November, then you're golden. That is the most current. So, okay. Anything else I can help anybody with? Let's see, that should not be. Looking at report, I seem to several of our clients that received reimbursement for one thing or another. Yeah, Sandy. Yeah, I don't believe your OCB clients are reportable, but please, I believe it's Kat Martin. Please talk to Kat and or Maxine. They will not steer you wrong. And I know we did a great deal last year of work to get things right last year. So they are your best resource. If they're using agency object 6800, it's not a reportable 1099 object code. Agency object, I don't know what is the comp object that's associated with agency object code. Oh, that's Kat. Oh, sorry. You're responding to Sandy. Remember that, Sandy, you need to look down at the bottom where it says IRS box. If it's an N, it means it's not being reported. It's not reportable. Okay. Any other questions? I think we are good to stop recording, Julie. Cecilia, how can I help you? What was the question? Oh, question. We noticed that payment should have been coded to a 1099 reportable comp object 6910, but the amount to be corrected was a garnished payment to the Department of Revenue. Can the garnished payment comp object still be corrected? Okay, garnishments are kind of interesting. They are kind of like a backup withholding, how they're reported on the 1099. All of the dollar amount is reportable to the vendor. So if you move it for 15,416, I believe, and it won't report backup withholding because it's a garnishment. So all the income is reportable to that vendor. And so move it will. You should move it. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Carlene. This, I think, was a really great training. I think people probably learned a lot. It's always a refresher needed for all these tax-related information. If you have more questions, please get a hold of Carlene, or you can contact your agency support analyst and maybe we'll go to Carlene. But thank you very much, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you, everyone, for your attendance. I enjoy you all, and I look forward to working with you.